All right, everybody. We got another very special guest for you this week. I want everybody to welcome to the show Caitlin Yarsky. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hey,
Thanks.
Caitlin.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem. That seems like a fun last name to say, Chris. You you like dragged it out at the end there, like Yarsky. I feel like Caitlin's probably lived a life of like people dragging that out. Or like...
Yeah,
you know what it might be?
The last name.
What?
It might be the Eagles fan in me where I hear Jaworski.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's only you then.
She
Thanks
also
for
has a
being
very
here.
piratey sound. Yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, make a good pirate name. Yarsky Swamp the Deck. I don't know, something like that. Oh, that's awesome. Hopefully you do a pirate book next. That would be great. But yeah, thanks for being here. Let's before we talk about all the awesome books you've done and the amazing art, let's get your origin story of what got you into comics. I saw your resume and you do some other stuff like graphic design, video games too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did it happen that you got into comic books?
So I kind of grew up always, I kind of did my own little independent stories, growing up, and I just never kind of put it together that I could do that as a living, really. And it didn't occur to me that it was really like a viable career option. And I think I went into games because it kind of just happened that way after college. I had a partner who was in work at this place called Work Advantage Interactive in Rochester, and it was like 6 people at the time, and they needed more artists. And so I kind of learned on the job, and ended up art directing there, and did a lot of mini game stuff, things for Nickelodeon and a lot of SpongeBob.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
And it was fun. Yeah, I learned a lot about typography and graphic design and animation and stuff like that. So that was cool. And I still do game design as well as comics. So right now I'm doing like UI design for a company called Way Forward Games, which is in California.
Okay.
So I do remote work with them. So
love Way Forward.
Yeah. Way Forward's awesome. So yeah, I think about 6 years into Working Man, I felt like I needed to take a break and try doing freelance and figure out what I really wanted to do art-wise, because I just felt like I wasn't quite feeling fulfilled, So, because I'm not really a gamer, I mean, that's where most of the art jobs are. I would argue right now is in games. So I would say that like you don't necessarily have to be a gamer to be working in games. It's just like where a lot of the art related jobs are.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I just felt like I needed to try something else. So after a little while of kind of like exploring things, I decided to do like a portfolio piece, like a 10-page story that I wrote and drew called The Changeable Harper Finn. And then I kind of used that as like a portfolio piece and sent it around to everybody I could think of, like looked up different publishers and how to submit stuff. And, Boom Studios had a submission thing where they said like, put some pages up on our wall on Facebook. And, I guess if they liked you, then they would reach out, and they never did. But Sean Lewis was looking for artists, and he didn't know how to find artists. And it's another one of those things. It's like artists don't know how to find jobs in comics, and comic writers don't know how to find artists. It's like it's just a kind of a hodgepodge. It's a difficult and unorganized world,
Right.
So he's looking for artists, and he comes across that Boom thing, and he looks through all those pages, and he finds my stuff, and he sends me an email with his script for Coyotes, and he told me, I did this book called Saints for Image, and if you want to take a look at this script. So I took a look at it, and I thought I could definitely see working with this guy, and so we started collaborating and worked on it for a good long time, because it takes longer, I think, especially when you're doing it on spec. So and eventually we got into Image, so that's how it started.
That's pretty cool. And Coyotes is as far as the art goes, it's it's a little on the horror side, right? Was that something you were interested in to begin with? Was that like the dysmorphia and all these like weird drawings? Was that something you were like kind of into, or you just ended up having to draw it? But
it's not really my like exact cup of tea. Like I wasn't like gunning for horror stuff. It would just kind of happen that way. Like that was the which is it's kind of adjacent to what I really love. I mean, I love like dark fantasy, and dark fantasy can be gory and horror-y. You know, I like The Sandman is like my favorite thing ever, and that's pretty disturbing and gory in some spots. So so it wasn't too far off, and I really did enjoy drawing like the more monstrous like transformation stuff in the Coyotes world. It was really fun, and like mostly because I got to like make up stuff a lot, and I use a lot of reference, and so it was like, oh, I could just do whatever the hell I want, and kind of like, oh, can we curse on this thing? Because this is So I was just like, oh, I can draw like boils and weird stuff coming out of people's like faces, and that was fun.
You're like, oh yeah, I could disgusting like boils that are popping, and it's like I can do this.
It's like seeping
The one thing I wanted to talk to you about too is I've noticed across like all your books, and I haven't read Coyotes or Bliss yet, but I've looked at the art and stuff. But especially in Black Hammer, the way you draw people's faces, and I don't know if that makes it more disturbing for me when you have like all these weird transformations and like monsters and stuff. But then you look at the people's faces and they're very expressive and human. And is that something you practiced over time, or it was just something that you drew like that? Like that's how you see faces, but like everybody had the way that the facial tics and expressions seem to really stand out with your art, and it's awesome.
Thanks. I mean, it's honestly my favorite part of drawing comics is facial expressions and character designs and just kind of character acting. I think I heard David Harper say that phrase before, and I never heard it before. But character acting, like that's a really good phrase because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like you're. And I remember even watching like the making of Lord of the Rings when I was a teenager, and what's his name?
Is it Vigo?
No, Frodo.
Oh,
I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he said, I don't know how I drew a blank. I was like obsessed with those movies. But okay.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, he said that he was like realizing that the animators are like shy actors. And that's kind of how because I think he was talking about like Gollum, you know, and like the way that, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I kind of feel that way now about comics too. I feel like, you know, when we're drawing comics, we're kind of acting through the characters with their drawings. And so it's really fun to like, you know, and there's less pressure because you can mess it up and like redraw it and nobody's going to like, you know, you're not on stage or anything. So it's definitely my favorite part of it is trying to get the expressions to shine through.
It's funny because I would almost like attribute it to what like watching something like Evil Dead, where Bruce Campbell, like even without him speaking, he's very expressive with his face, right? And almost people would be like, "Oh, that's like a B movie, that's bad acting." But for comics, on the other side, I think it adds a little more to it. It really stood out with your art, which was kind of interesting to me. So that's pretty cool.
It's a little bit like animation, where you really kind of like need to go over the top. It's almost like, or like theater, you know, like in theater, like people have to kind of do more, you know, when in like film, it's like you got to do less, but than is expected. But with this stuff, I feel like, you know, like if you look at like Norman Rockwell drawings, right? Like if you look at their reference, like his reference is like, it's usually, you know, pretty cartoony, but then the way he exaggerates it is just a little bit more than how most people would actually sit or talk or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So then and then you worked with Sean again on Bliss, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that came after your Coyotes. Let's talk about that.
So we were shooting ideas back and forth at each other about for stories for months, and finally I remember we kind of came to this like, what if there was a city where there was a drug that made you forget the bad things that you did? So he was like, I'm going to run with that. And so he came back with, and then he wanted to do a story with like a father-son theme to it as well. So it started coming together after that. And it's really great working with Sean because he really treats you like an equal partner, and you get to kind of like have collaborative brainstorming sessions about the storyline and the character arcs and like what you think is could happen next and what might make more sense than other things. And so it's like, it's a much more, it's a very collaborative process as opposed to most, collaborations. So,
So, I mean, you're creating the characters as well in a sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, even the character designs, like they were just friends of mine from Rochester that came and modeled. I was just asking around. Like I was thinking about the most interesting looking people that I was friends with, and I was like, oh, this person's really interesting looking. This person's really interesting looking. And I was like, would you like to pose for like? So almost the whole series, or the first half of the series, because the pandemic hit in like issue 5 or something. But the first half of the series is pretty much acted out page by page with a bunch of friends of mine. Yeah, I should like publish it someday. It was
that's actually so cool.
Yeah.
A little stage set up in your apartment, and you're just having them acted out as you're like, just guys, slow down.
Totally. And not even a stage. It was just like a living room, and I had a couple of roommates who were really, really nice letting all this happen. And it was like 2-hour sessions where I'm standing on chairs and people are in like costumes, and we're like, okay, now you're doing this, and like now you're yelling, and now you're holding him by the neck, and you got to figure that out. And it's like,
that's amazing.
It's really fun, actually. Yeah.
Were you like, okay, to hold that for like a few more minutes so I could get that, drawn out or something?
No, I would take pictures, lots of pictures.
Oh, okay, that helps. Yeah. See, my mind, I'm not very artistic. Pictures are a thing. Yep, it's the 21st century. Yep.
Right.
I didn't think about
Did they all get comps of the book as well, considering they're starring in it?
Yeah, right.
I don't think I was in Rochester very much after that, so like I don't even know. I think I offered them, but I think I think a bunch of them wanted to just buy them too, just to be supportive, which is really sweet. So
that's awesome. That's
they
so
were
cool.
they were great.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And then how did Black Hammer come about?
So Black Hammer came about where I was in touch with an editor who was looking for people, and I kind of submitted my portfolio of stuff, Bliss and Coyotes and the Buffy story I did for Boom, and then I guess Jeff looked at a bunch of different artists and decided he liked my stuff, and they went with me. And I was I didn't even know what the project was or who it was for until I got the job, and then I was like, what?
That's pretty big.
So it was really exciting. And then I obviously I read it, and I was like, this is also fucking amazing story.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit. And and then I was like, I still remember drawing the first page and just being like, oh my God.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of pressure there, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
Especially with Dean's art in the original series too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's amazing,
amazing.
Yeah, and I that's awesome that Jeff was on the show a few years ago with us, but I don't think we'll ever get him back, Chris, just because of the amount of projects he does now. But,
he is really prolific.
Yeah.
So it's incredible how much he does.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it makes sense as I've personally been reading Black Hammer since the beginning, and I'm a huge fan of just everything that he does in that. And when we got to this and I started to see your art, it made sense to me, everything Mike's been saying for the past 10, 15 minutes we've been talking, because even though it still is kind of a superhero story, it's really about this single mom in the city trying to make her way through. And so there's more character moments and more acting.
Yeah.
Was that... So I'm guessing that's part of the reason why he looked at you and chose you is because of that, or was that kind of your influence coming into it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Maybe a mix of both. I don't really know the exact reason for that they picked me up, but I think that the character acting was probably a part of it, because there was a lot of that, like a lot of intimate moments with the family members and stuff, and then it gets trippier and trippier as the issues go on, and so yeah, I'm starting to get into some of the more like action-packed stuff, which is fun too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice mix of both, like weird, disfigured or dismembered bodies, and then nice moments between family members, kind of
right.
in one issue, right? It's like, oh, this person disemboweled on the floor, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna.
But now let's talk about this teenager and her problems with her mother.
This 15-year-old's issues. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But that's awesome for you. So it's like your fourth book and working with Lemire. That's got to be really cool, right? So yeah, how's that going?
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's wild. And it's just I'm still pinching myself, and I'm almost done with it. So I don't. Yeah.
Right.
It's really great.
That's awesome.
And we discussed a little bit pre-recording that you did the first chunk of issues. I forget the exact number. And now there's another artist working on it, and you're going to be coming back. Was that kind of the plan for the book all along, or was there another reason for the hiatus there?
I think that was the plan all along.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure he started working on stuff as I started, so I think that was already part of the overall plan.
Mm.
I'm not sure what the reasons for it all was. Maybe to, maybe to space out the work a little bit so it's not so much, like not so, relentless throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not really sure what the whole plan was there, but it's Malachi's great, so it's awesome watching his work. Yeah.
And you're wrapping it up, right? The last 4 issues?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Issues 9 through 12.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I mean that story's awesome, and you coming into the story, Dean's art's great, but like I said, you just fit so well for that. I thought it worked out awesome, and it looks great. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So have you announced or said anything about what's going on after, or are you still just like so focused on Black Hammer that you haven't thought past it?
Well, for a while that was the case, and I do have something coming up that I'm really freaking excited about, but I can't talk about it yet.
Okay.
But I will as soon as I get the okay to be like, to shout out from the mountaintops, I will.
Yeah.
But yes, I do have something very cool coming up, and I'm wildly excited about it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also just like Black Hammer, like just kind of like doing more and more and getting myself out there, and it's just been building up, which is really, I just feel really lucky.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, what you said about the graphic design of the video games, you're not a video game fan, and I think very rarely do we ever meet, like, I've just happened a couple times, an artist or a writer that doesn't really read comics. So were you into comics before all this, or you said you went back and you read Black Hammer? But I mean, were you always reading before that?
I read more like indie stuff, growing up, Persepolis and Mouse and stuff like that. Calvin and Hobbes, like less of the superhero, less of the big two kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
More indie stuff. And so, like, I think when I was 18, I got I got the first Sandman book, and it made my mind melt. And I was like, I have to read the rest of these right now.
Right, exactly.
And I'm not like I'm more of a fantasy and sci-fi book reader than comic reader. I still read them, and I still, like picking stuff up, especially if it's somebody I know or somebody whose art I really like. But yeah, I read more novels than comics.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
and
awesome.
Something that's been popping up a lot in some of our conversations recently, but like as you came along, we're doing all these books. How has the community been for you in terms of the creators that you work with or that you've gotten to know? Like, have there been a lot of support out there for you?
Oh man, I've had nothing but great experiences, honestly. I know there's definitely like a shadowy part of the comics industry and world and fandom that I'm glad that I haven't had to deal with at all. It's just been wonderful. Everybody's been super supportive and sweet and hardworking, and like every editor I've worked with has been great. Like I just, all the writers I've worked with have been awesome. So I've been really lucky that way. I've had a really great experience with them.
That's so cool. Yeah, we're happy for you. Congrats. I mean, it's only going to go from here. I mean, yeah, after, the amazing art you're doing and stuff. So, and we'd love to have you back on to talk about the next project. So,
yeah, as soon as I will definitely want to talk about that.
Okay, great. So where can our listeners and viewers find you if they want to follow all the stuff you're doing?
So I'm on Instagram, Caitlin Yarsky. That's my handle. Okay. And then Twitter, I'm Yarsky with 3 R's, like a pirate. And,
okay, so now we come full circle here.
Circling back around.
Circling back. Yarsky. Now we get it. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
You were not off the mark at all.
Yeah, great.
And I don't really use Facebook anymore. I have an account mostly to stay in touch with family members, but
Okay.
Twitter and Instagram. That's where you can find me.
Great.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you want to follow along with Caitlin's work, I'll have links down below to her Comixology site and her website as well. So make sure you go follow her and check out those sites.
Awesome.
Thanks, Caitlin, so much for being on. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me again. This was a blast.